Diontae Johnson over the longest reception of 22 and a half yards.
Yeah, Ryan has been attacking this Cardinals defense with this prop all year long to very good success. And he has in the column you can find over at sharpfootballanalysis.com that Arizona allows a league worst 61% completion rate on throws 15 or more yards downfield. And that kind of opens up both Johnson and Pickens for this prop. And so if you just wanted to play both of them, that probably isn't a bad idea. But just looking at the coverage and the amount of too high coverage the Cardinals play, that is a better scheme for Deontay Johnson, leads to more targets for Deontay Johnson. And so that's why he's put Deontay Johnson in the column, and that's why he's playing it. But I think you could make a similar argument for Pickens. And one thing I would add to it is that Kenny Pickett's deep ball rate for the season before last week was 9.3%. I believe that's off the top of my head. His deep ball rate was up to 12.1% last week. He threw over the middle on like 45% of his attempts last week. It was way down at 23, 24% in the season prior to that. And so it seems like they made a concerted effort. It could have been the Bengals defense, but they made a concerted effort to get the ball in the middle of the field to Pat Freiermuth. We obviously saw his stat line, and they made an effort to throw the ball down the field more. And if you're throwing the ball down the field against the Cardinals, you are likely to find success. And so I think that's a big part of why we like this prop.
Yeah, and I guess my comment is, you mentioned George Pickens. If you hadn't, I would have. I would have guessed that Pickens would have been, if Ryan was here, I would have asked him why Diontae instead of Pickens. And I'm sure he would have had a very good reason because he's Ryan. But I like, and we'll get to this when we get to the DFS section. I'm a big fan of the Steelers this week. Let's go to the second prop, which is another over of the longest reception, and that is DeAndre Hopkins. And right now we show it again at 22 and a half, and Will Levis has a cannon.
Yeah, and I think after that first game with Will Levis, with the 4 touchdowns, I'm pretty sure Ryan thought that we were going to be able to cash longest reception overs for the Tennessee Titans pass catchers. And it did work out a few times. We did it with Kyle Phillips one week, really hit for us. And so it has worked out a few times, but it hasn't worked out as much for DeAndre Hopkins. This is just 3-2, this prop with Will Levis, the over the longest reception. But I mean, I think it's something you keep going back to the well with, because over the long haul, it is going to hit more often than not. Levis leads the league in his rate of throwing 15 or more yards downfield. 32% of his attempts, 20% of his attempts have been 20 or more yards. Since Levis took over, DeAndre Hopkins has seen 12 targets at 20 or more yards downfield, which is 2.4 per game. That's the third most in the league over that span. And the other thing I would add to that is that the Colts, and we know this from DFS, the Colts tend to create a good fantasy environments they have all year. And that could lead to, they've hidden Will Levis a little bit. They've limited his passing attempts. He had one game where I think he had 18 passing attempts. And when that happens, it's going to be hard to hit any of these props. You need volume still to hit the longest reception prop, because the more opportunities you have at it, obviously, the more likely it is to hit. I think we could see more volume from the Titans passing game than we've seen recently, just because of the environment the Colts create in their games. And so that gives you a little bit more of a nudge here towards the over.
We'll go to our third prop, which is Jahmyr Gibbs, the over on the longest rush at 16 and a half.
So every time Ryan writes about longest rush, and he has a ton of success with longest rush, he always harps on how many yards is the offensive line creating, because if the offensive line is able to create 3 yards before contact, the chances of a 15+ yard run increases dramatically. And according to True Media from Ryan, running backs pick up at least 3 yards before contact on 26% of their carries against the Saints, which is the 5th worst rate for the defense. And when Gibbs gets at least 3 yards on touch, he converts it into a gain of 15 or more yards on 24% of his carries, in which he gets those 3 yards untouched. The other thing I would add to that is this could be a game in which the Lions are able to, kind of sit on the ball in the second half. There's a lot of injury concerns in the Saints passing game. The offense already, it can't score in the red zone, and it was already having issues even without these wide receiver concerns. So this could be a game where the Lions are just sitting on the ball in the second half, and when they're leading in the second half, they run the football. They have a 41.9% drop back rate in the second half when leading, and so that gives even more opportunities. So I think there are a lot of reasons why you would want to take the over on this longest rush prop.